most of the coaches I've trained with at my original coach training program or other coaches that have been in groups, even one of my mentor coaches for a while, don't do coaching anymore. And so I think this is a really important question for that reason, because these people aren't out there serving others as coaches because of something often around finances. They either couldn't get enough clients or they were burning out. So one thing I tell when I'm talking to new coaches, one thing I say is, charge a minimum of $1,000 a month. Because if you're doing less than $1,000 a month, it's not going to be sustainable for a client.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues, the podcast where we interview business owners on how they built their businesses and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is David Wynn, and I'm a business coach and the founder of Purple Circle, where we help business owners achieve their first 6-figure, 7-figure, and 8-figure year, all without sacrificing their quality of life. Before becoming a business coach and before founding Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7- and 8-figure coaching businesses and have been a consultant at several businesses doing over $100 million each, including some that are publicly listed and doing over $1 billion each. In every episode of the podcast, you're going to learn lessons that took our guests years to learn, and you'll be able to learn that in minutes. No matter if you're a new business owner or an established business owner, every episode is going to give you the clues in order to elevate your business.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Bryan Daigle, a professional certified coach with an MBA whose 20 plus years across 4 different industries have been defined by one consistent choice: taking the road less traveled with courage, creativity, and purpose. Bryan founded a men's leadership coaching group specifically for entrepreneurs, executives, and high achievers who either lack a vision aligned with their values or know they aren't fully living into the vision they have. Bryan's coaching goes beyond professional performance, helping men become better husbands, more compassionate fathers, and more effective leaders by addressing the deeper alignment between who they are and who they show up every day. Welcome to the show, Bryan.
Thank you, Pedro. Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, great to have you. Okay, Bryan. And by the way, I'm a kind of a comic book nerd myself, so I love the first editions, the origin story and all of that. Because at the end of the day, you could be doing a lot of things, right? You could be a chef, you could be a plumber, but here we are, you're a coach. Now, can you walk me through about that decision? What made you choose coaching?
It really starts when, part of the story is I had a business that I was running for 12 years, and I started coaching employees in that business and found out I really loved it. I would get goosebumps when I had those conversations. And so I found out, this is really fun. So that's part of the story. The other part of the story is that, I, in my early 30s, I achieved everything I had wanted to achieve. Real success, a business that made great money and didn't run, with me involved in the day-to-day, other people running it, and had the house, car, wife, and I still wasn't fulfilled. And so that realization, actually I had an employee who was working for me who said, "Hey, you're not happy here. Why are you here?" And, that realization sent me on a journey. And that journey was, 3 years, 4 years. And at one point I was at my low, going through a divorce, had a failed business with my ex, sleeping in a friend's storage room, pile of debt, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. My other business was still running. I didn't want to go back to it. And ultimately, I had worked with coaches. I had hired coaches for my employees to see. And I was like, well, why don't I give this a try? And honestly, coaching saved me. And the coaching program that I found, it was a coach training program, but I had to do a bunch of self-work before I could coach others. And that program saved me. And it's a version of the program I still teach today and take groups of men through.
Okay. Can you walk me through, because you mentioned something very important, right? You mentioned that you realized you were unhappy. Okay. How one detect that type of behavior or something like, this is not for me? Because it sounds like you were going through some stuff and then you realize, okay, I need something different. But what clicked to make that decision and actually to understand you were unhappy?
Well, one, the realization that I wasn't happy, just achieving everything I wanted, but it not being the mountaintop I thought it was, which I think a lot of high achieving, successful people can relate to. If I make this money, if I have this achievement, I win this award, and then realizing that happiness doesn't linger as fulfillment or contentment. And what clicked for me, I just felt called to it when I started looking into, okay, if I were to become a coach, what kind of training would I get? And there was a spiritual life coaching program that started the following week. It only started a few times a year, but started the following week. It was down the road in Dallas. I'm in Austin. I was just fully in alignment with the message and the work. And I just felt like all signs pointed to go this direction. And I honestly just felt there was divine intervention, and I was called to move in that direction. And only later did I see, coaching I love coaching because, first of all, I get to do a lot of self work and then take that and help other people based on what I've embodied and integrated. Right. And it's also the meeting place of all my past experiences and training and business and entrepreneurship and leadership and emotional intelligence and having high level communication. It's the intersection of that and all the stuff I'm really interested in, and mindfulness. And so it just felt like, it was the perfect place for me to be.
Okay. And let me ask you this. Here's the thing, right? I see on social media a lot of people, they are comparing their inner self to other people's exterior self, right? So it's not aligned, right? Let's put it like that. Do you feel, or did you feel at that point that you had that you were playing someone else's or going through someone else's playbook of what success looks like, and that was not really your playbook? You told me, oh, I hit a level or I hit a goal, and that I didn't feel fulfilled, right? So does that mean that was not your goal at all, and you were trying to, replicate something you've seen, and you understood that, oh, that what success looked like?
Yeah, great question. There were elements of it that were aligned with me, but with societal MBA conditioning, right? I thought, oh, this is what success looks like. And if I don't get here, then I'm not quote unquote successful. If I'm not doing this, then I'm not a leader, right? And so, I had to redefine what success was for me. And at the end of the day, success was much more meaningful work, being able to do much more meaningful work that felt in alignment with my purpose, my new purpose that I came up with. My old purpose was to create products and launch businesses, and I did that. And then when I lost that purpose, I had to create a new one. And coaching is in alignment with that new purpose.
Interesting. Okay. Now I want to dive into a little bit of part that I really like, which is something like an identity shift that happens from, you mentioned yourself, you're coaching employees, actually feels like a calling. I'm helping people. Sometimes I'm advice giving and all that. But there is a moment for a business owner that turns out to be a coach too, when he turns this into a real business, right? And sometimes the milestone is the first paying customer. Sometimes it's the first invoice. Sometimes it's opening the LLC. I don't know, but can you walk me through how that felt like when you really felt like, hey, I am a coach and I am a business owner,
Yeah. The coaching, the business of coaching it's a hustle archetype of business, right? In terms of, you have to constantly be filling your pipeline, constantly be getting new clients, and there's churn, like inevitably, people roll off. And so you have to find new people to replace them. I think for me, before the call, we had spoken a little bit about my first paying client, which was, I remember the day I was dancing in the living room. Like I was just so elated. I had made the ask, connected with this person, made the ask, and they said yes. And it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But I wouldn't say that's when it felt like a business. It felt like another sign of, like something from Paulo Coelho's Alchemist. This is like another sign from God that I'm moving in the right direction. So it's just like a little breadcrumb for me to take. But I wouldn't say that's when I felt like I had a business. I think I felt like I had a business when this was about 2 years later, 19, when, I have a former professor who's a mentor. He's an executive coach. And he had asked me at one point, early in my journey, what's your intention? And I said, oh, my intention is to get clients. And he said, no, what's your intention? I said, to get clients. And he's like, no, that's your goal. What is your intention? And I was stumped. And he said, your intention is to serve. And in late 2019, something clicked in me. I'd sat with that wisdom for a year or so, and something clicked in me. And I started doing this service meditation before each of my client calls. I am here to serve them. And in whatever way I can. And and my business doubled in a month. I think that's when I felt, I had like double the number of clients the next month. And that's really when I felt I have a business now. And I still had this other business being run by other people that I was not interested in, right? Just tried to stay as far away from that as possible. And it was really that change in mindset, change in intention to service, which allowed my business to grow. And then I was able to let go and sell that other business.
I love the what's your intention question.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you got whenever that happens, I worked in sales too, right? I was a high ticket sales closer for a business coach. And whenever I distance myself from that material outcome, that's when things really click, because you're not thinking, oh, this was a lost sale. You served anyway. You talked to someone, you went through a discovery. It was maybe that was not just they were not ready, or there are other circumstances that they didn't close, right? But if you're coming from that perspective, it doesn't feel like you lost something. You know what I mean? And that, at least for me, it always helped me in my mindset and all that. Now, I'm curious about one thing, Bryan, because we kind of established an introduction, who do you serve? But in the early days, after you got rolling, right? Who are the people that kept showing up? Because sometimes in coaching, we're trying to help everyone, right?
Yeah.
To make it work. Now that's the evolution from it, and the ones you realize, okay, this is my tribe.
Yeah. I think it's natural for coaches starting out in the beginning, honestly, just to say yes to everyone. You might have to do that to survive, just to like keep a coaching business alive, or just keep putting food on the table and keep paying rent. And yeah, so sometimes you have to say yes to everyone. What I noticed is that I was in alignment and able to affect the most change in people who were like me, people that were, executives, entrepreneurs, leaders, men that had achieved a level of professional financial success where objectively anyone could look at them and be like, oh, that person, yeah, he's successful, and had gotten to that point and realized they weren't happy. They weren't fulfilled. They weren't content, whether it's in their work, whether it's in their marriage, whether it's in their relationships, whether it's with their health. But ultimately, that's the people that I kept resonating with the most. And it's not exclusively that. I have some women clients, and I have clients like young up and coming leaders that join my groups. But I'd say the ones, that I've loved working with the most and that affect the most to change are the people that are like me. And I get to help them with the things that I've worked on myself.
Sounds like you're serving past Bryan at the end of the day.
In a way, my metaphor is like I crossed this bridge. I don't know if we ever fully crossed the bridge, right? But I'm maybe a further along on the bridge, and I get to turn around and offer a lending hand, a helping hand to someone who's trying to figure out how to start crossing that bridge.
Okay. Now, let's pretend I'm one of those guys, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I hit a ceiling, feeling kind of unfulfilled. I'm your ICP. I'm your ideal client profile in this scenario. First of all, how would I be able to find you, like marketing wise,
Yeah, so I make myself findable. I have some great SEO, ask for referrals, do those basic things. So yeah, I'm easily findable. I think, I came into this podcast thinking about, okay, what did I really want to share that was different? And I think for me, go out there and do the actions and try the marketing campaigns and try AdWords and LinkedIn and Meta and all this stuff. Definitely ask for referrals, because that's how my business sustained itself for the first several years. But ultimately, it comes down more of what I was alluding to in that story about changing my intention, is that if I raise my mindset into a more positive mental state, if I raise my emotional state into a more positive emotional state, if I feel connected to my purpose and inspired, then magic happens. People come out of the woodwork. People find me on Grok, ChatGPT, Claude, Google, whatever it is. They just come out of the woodwork. And I've noticed this time and time again, because I'll go down paths of, I need to do cold messaging outreach on LinkedIn, and I'll give it a try. I've tried it 3 times and it never worked. It's never effective, at least for me. I don't know if there's anyone successful out there doing it, but it hasn't worked well for me. And the moment this happened recently, a couple of months ago, where I was doing another round of cold outreach on LinkedIn, and had a conversation with my wife, and she's like, why are you doing that? You clearly don't enjoy doing what you're doing. And that day I decided not to do that. And in the next week, I got 4 prospect calls where I had 0 for like 2 to 3 months. Mm-hmm. So again, me changing my mental, emotional, maybe even spiritual state, right, has has been incredibly effective for me and attracted clients.
Okay. I'm still that guy in this scenario. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's say I was referred to you. I Googled you. Grok told me to talk to you. Even you sent me a DM on LinkedIn. And this time I answered. I was like, okay, this Bryan seems cool. Okay. I resonated with what you got out there. And I reach out and I'm like, hey, how do I work with you? We can fast forward the sales process. Let's just say there's alignment. Okay. We talk or whatever that looks like. My question to you is, how does it look like to work with you, your company? Okay. And what are the outcomes I can expect out of it?
Yeah. There's different ways I work with people, and there's a variety of different outcomes. It really depends on what they're bringing. Again, some people, some of the men I work with, they're very professionally and financially successful, unhappy with their job. All right. So I would say probably a third of my clients end up leaving their job in our work together and go on to find something much more fulfilling. I met with one of those clients last week, and it was so good to see. I mean, he's been on a journey. He left a job he was unfulfilled with, tried to work at a startup where the founders were, it was a little chaotic and not, let's say, an ideal fit for him. And then he left that and went back to working with a former boss at a different company. And he's so happy now, right? So that might be the issue, or it might be something in their marriage or relationship or partnership. They don't feel connected. They're unhappy. Yeah. So the results really depend on what the issues are, where they're noticing a lack of fulfillment, lack of contentment, disconnection in their life. Yeah. And I have, I work one-on-one with people who want to do that. And I have groups, men's groups, that I take through the Hero's Journey program, which is my specific 6-month coaching program. And so I give people some different options and just figure out what's in alignment with them.
Okay. There's a quote in sales that is something like, sell them what they want, give them what they need, right? And in a coaching practice, sometimes it takes some time for the relationship to evolve, right? Were there any occasions that you saw clients joining you, or coachees, however you want to call them, that they joined for a reason? They're like, I want help with X, Y, and Z. And they ended up getting something entirely different.
Yeah.
And if you have any examples for me.
Yeah, all the time. So I call that a head fake. And it's like, oh, you think you want this? Okay, let's work on this. And ultimately, what we ended up working on is much more powerful, much more deep. It's much deeper. It's much more impacting in all areas of their life. Yeah, I want to grow my business, or I want to leave my work. And at the end of the day, we're working on limiting beliefs that were created in childhood, right? Or like behaviors that were created when they were teenagers, or self-talk that came from 40 years ago, right? So that's, you take your quote, your sales quote reminds me of the Steve Jobs quote, right? If you would ask people what they wanted for another music device, they would have said, just another walk, right? And he gave them the iPod, something completely out of left field. So I think, working, clients come in with what their issues are, what they think they're wanting. And my hope and my experience is that often we'll be able to work on something much, much greater in the scheme of their life, like something they'll look back on when they're 80 and be happy that they chose to work with me or chose that direction that they did.
Okay. And on a more tactical level, because whenever someone tells me men's group, I'm imagining we're in the jungle, we're hunting.
Yeah.
So do you have like retreats or something like that? Because I always feel like that this is always I'm a goofball, right? I'm not the benchmark for this, but sometimes I hear people like, oh, men's group. I'm like, nice, we're going to the woods. You know what I mean?
There's value in the woods. There really is. Yeah. I do lead occasional retreats, once or several times a year for my alumni groups, for people that have been through my program. Actually, me and my family were moving to Bali this summer. I don't know if I mentioned on our introductory call. We're moving to Bali this summer because we want to have a big family adventure while our kids are young. And one of the things I'm looking forward to is having clients come to Bali and doing retreats there. And I think there is something special. There are men's groups where it's like, let's work out and do some coaching. And, that's in line with some people, and that's great. For me, I really love getting into nature. I think there's something about being in a group of men in nature without distractions that creates a realness, just creates unexpected experiences. It creates challenges. I took a group of clients up a 14,000 foot mountain in Colorado this past summer. It was incredible, and we used the whole hike and experience as like a metaphor for what we find challenging in life. The mountain that we're hiking up in life, and like what are the things that are going to get in the way? What is the things we're saying to ourselves? Are we beating ourselves down, or are we cheerleaders, right? For ourselves. So I do that. I do men's groups occasionally, but most of our calls are on Zoom, virtual calls with the occasional retreat.
Okay, nice. I was just curious. Now, I have a question for you, which is about a hot topic in the coaching industry and usually all service-based industries. Okay, pricing. But we don't have to talk about hard numbers. It's more about the mindset behind it, right? Because
hmm
I see a lot of coaches out there going through that topic, and it's a very self-worth path, right?
Yeah.
It's like, am I charging too much? Am I not charging enough? I've seen people doing pro bono work and getting burned because they were like trying to validate themselves, but people are not showing up because there was no commitment and all
There's
that.
no skin in the game. Yeah.
So, how do you think about it today? And were there any lessons along the way that shaped how you landed where you are, specifically about pricing?
Yeah. Great question. Because I think it's important. So most of the coaches I've trained with at my original coach training program, or other coaches that have been in groups, even one of my mentor coaches for a while, don't do coaching anymore. And so I think this is a really important question for that reason, because these people aren't out there serving others as coaches because of something often around finances. They either couldn't get enough clients or they were burning out. So one thing I tell when I'm talking to new coaches, one thing I say is, charge a minimum of 1,000 a month. Because if you're doing less than 1,000 a month, it's not going to be sustainable for a client. And whether you charge hourly, or $250 an hour, 4 meetings a month, or 1,000 a month, whatever it is, each client needs to be 1,000 a month for this to be a sustainable business. Because I think if you charge less than that and you're able to get a lot of clients, great. Well, then you're going to burn out. I've met a lot of coaches who, they have 50, 60 clients, right? And they're charging them each $250 a month. And those people didn't enjoy coaching anymore. They lost the spark that led them into coaching in the first place. So that's one thought. The other thought, kind of around, what we price at, is how we value. It's kind of an iterative approach of how we value ourselves, but also how the marketplace and how clients value us, right? And how the value that we're providing to our clients. I mean, right now with AI, we can go on AI and get great advice, right? We can use AI as a therapist. And I think what is going to have us as coaches stand out the most are the most human of our elements, right? Like when I get goosebumps when a client has a breakthrough and I get to share that, well, AI is never going to get goosebumps, right? So I think, doing pricing in alignment with the value you're providing, pricing what you wouldn't be resentful for pricing. I've done that when I started out. I priced too low, and then I found myself resentful for those clients, right? So I think that's something to watch out for. And I think the third piece is do the self work around money beliefs. There's a great book called The Energy of Money, and it is the best book on how to change your relationship with money. And I've reread this book 3 times. I actually reread part of it a couple of years ago when my business had dropped by half, and I had all these, beliefs and parts of me that were coming up. And I was saying to my wife, should I quit coaching? Should I leave coaching? I wasn't sure. And I went back and did some work around my money beliefs and values, and was able to find my way back, able to fall in love with coaching again.
Nice. I'm gonna jump on a boat here. You mentioned burnout, right? And I see a lot of coaches out there burning themselves out, really, because they're wearing all the hats, right, Brian? They're the marketer, they're the salespeople, they're delivering the operations or the coaching itself, right? So, how do you think about capacity so you don't stretch yourself too thin?
How I think about capacity.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a little
Yeah.
example about myself. Okay.
Yeah,
I
please.
was in corporate. I worked at banking. I worked at consulting firm Ernest and Young here in Brazil. And when I clocked out, right? I was like, sayonara, friends. And I
Yeah.
just went home. And I'm a coach too, right? And sometimes, and I'm also the podcast host for Success Leaves Clues. And sometimes this doesn't feel like work, right? It's
Yeah.
fun. That's one thing. I need to hold myself back. But the other thing is like sometimes I see coaches like they're not considering the unbillable hours, the
Yeah.
business development side. So
Yeah.
how do you think about that? How do you hold yourself back, or how do you organize your own mindset to not burn yourself,
Yeah. I think it comes down to, I really liked how you said, having these conversations is fun. That's why I love doing podcasts as well. I walk away from them more energized. I'm like, oh, that was a lot of fun. So it doesn't feel like work. That's the ideal, right? Is when work doesn't feel like work. Work feels fun. And I'd say the same about a lot of my client conversations. So I think to prevent burnout, it comes down to boundaries. So boundaries, whatever, all different. We're in different situations. So, but setting boundaries that make sense for you, right? So that comes, I have 2 young kids. So I have a hard stop at 5 during the summer of pickup, at 3:45, depending on the week. And I prioritize my family over my business. That's something, so setting, figuring out what the priorities are, but also setting hard boundaries. Or like I just had a group, coaching group just wrap up. And after a month, after we had our final meeting, closed the chat. Right. So that's like another boundary. So I think there's boundaries you set with others. There's psychic boundaries. There's physical boundaries. There's time boundaries. So finding ways to set boundaries. And if you start noticing resentment, usually it comes back to a boundary issue. Either you haven't set a good boundary or someone keeps crossing, and violating your boundary, at which point that might be time to say, this has been great, but this isn't working for me. I'll see you later.
Okay. I like that. Got to stand
Mhm.
your ground, right? Now,
Yeah.
well, first of all, you have 2 young kids. I have 2 young kids, 3 and 7. So I don't feel like a parent. I feel like a referee most of the time. Okay.
Yeah.
There's that. Now talking
Sometimes
about
a wrestling referee. Yeah.
exactly. Now by talking about that, where I want to jump into future, right? We're talking about kids. You mentioned Bali and all of that. Now I'm curious, where are you taking all this? Looking ahead, where do you see the business going? What's exciting?
Yeah. The first thing that comes up is, I asked, we went on sabbatical in Bali 2 years ago. And we fell in love, and that's why we're moving there. It's inconvenient, and you're on God's path when you're doing something inconvenient but still want to do it. So we're moving to this very inconvenient place on the other side of the earth, with the worst time zone difference for having business hour calls, 13-hour difference to Central Time. And so, when I was in Bali and I had a meditation, I asked universe, God, whatever your framework is, I asked, why am I doing this? Okay, I'm in love with this place. We've decided to do this. Why am I doing this? And something that came up was, I'm going to get to find a new way of being. I'm going to reconnect again to my spirituality, have a deeper connection to God. And then I'm going to be able to take that back and help people with that. So I'm going to grow just in terms of my way of being and my connection to God. So that's kind of the deeper, what I'm looking forward to at a deeper level. In terms of business, what does it look like? What I'm hoping, I have groups, I have one-on-one. I want to increase the size of my groups. So I would love to launch some dad groups, because that's been my growth edge. I'm sure, as you know, it's tough being a parent, and I've had to go back to therapy and go back to doing a lot of self-work to be less reactive with my kids. And so I would love to launch a dad's group to be in support of high achieving dads who are noticing that as well. Also, I'm going to be in Asia Pacific time zone. So I'd love to, there's a Asia Pacific Coaching Alliance. I'm planning on getting connected with them and having some clients in Singapore, Australia, Hong Kong, wherever they end up being. And continuing, almost all of my clients transitioned with me to Bali. So that's something I'm really excited about. I only had one who off-boarded, but it was because he felt really complete with our coaching, and that's awesome. All my clients are transitioning with me, and they're making small sacrifices too, having calls at slightly inconvenient times for them. So I love that they said yes and are supporting me and my family in this experience.
Interesting. Okay. It's almost like a partnership, not clients. That's great, man. I mean, the relationship you built with them, that means a lot. I mean, now I'm curious. I want to throw you one last question. Okay. Let's pretend, Bryan, we have a time machine in front of us. Okay. You can step in and you can go back in time and give one piece of business advice to your own self, the past self, Bryan, when he was opening shop for his coaching practice. What would that be?
The advice would be actually the advice that I took for myself, which is work on myself before working on others. So do the deep healing self work, reconditioning stuff from childhood, society, authority figures, creating, bringing awareness, acceptance to limiting beliefs, self-talk behaviors, and creating new beliefs, self-talk and behaviors, and doing that work. Because I think, by doing that, you are going to I was able to make such a larger impact and able to connect with people in a much different way than if when I started my business, I wanted to have 10 one-on-one clients in the first 3 months. Yes, everyone wants that, right? Pedro, did you want that? Right? Everyone wants that. And I'm so thankful now that didn't happen, that it was a slow growth curve for me, because it gave me time to grow into a place where I could be ready to serve others in a non-superficial way, in a much deeper capacity.
I love that, man. Now,
Totally counterintuitive to, maybe
it is.
the rest of the messages. And that's, I want to have a different conversation today. So there it is.
Yeah, here we go. Right now, Bryan, if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, and we're going to have all the links in the description, but what's the best way to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, I have my website, BryanDaigle.com. I am intermittently active on social media, so I'm not consistent there, but you can see my LinkedIn profile. Instagram is Next Level Bryan, or Bryan Next Level, sorry. Next Level Bryan is Bryan Adams,
That's
the singer.
a good one also. I was like, Next Level Bryan. I'm doing that, right? That's cool.
Yeah, it's Bryan Next Level. But if you want to follow Bryan Adams, you can go to Next Level Bryan. So you can find me. You can find me out there. I'm findable.
You're findable. Okay, I like that. There were a few things you shared today, Bryan, that really stayed with me. Okay. And when we were talking about your origin story, you mentioned you got goosebumps while coaching, right? Like, oh, there's something here, right? While coaching employees, right? And later on down the road, you mentioned, oh, I felt called. Like, it's almost like a calling, something that is like deep, deep in your soul that you're like, dude, this sounds like it is. I got to do this, So I really like that.
Thank you.
Also, shout out to your mentor, right? That coach that asked you, what is your intention?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That is such a powerful question. And sometimes I feel like I went through some stuff like that. It's like we have surface level answers to real deep questions. Like, what do you want? You can ask someone down the street and ask them what their goals. They will have a hard time to tell you most of the time. They're going to say a car, they're going to say a house, but dude, do you really want that? Or is it really the material part or the things that are going to fulfill and fill your cup, that type of thing. So that question is so powerful. So kudos to your mentor and you too, to giving him that shout out. And last but not least, the advice, right? When you said work on myself before working on others. And that ties down with my experience personally. I don't have, and with the parenting group. And the reason I'm going to bring this up is because I don't have a great relationship with one of my brothers. And I have 2 boys. So sometimes it triggers me if I see them fighting, because I'm projecting that they're not going to have a good relationship too. But that's on me, right? They have nothing to do with that.
Right.
But I have a hard time, holding myself back to not overreact, because sometimes I cannot accept the fact that they're fighting, So,
yeah.
Pedro, it's hard, right?
It's so hard. And that's, there's no change without awareness. So the fact that you have awareness means change is possible.
Yes. Agreed. 100. And I have a wife that helps me with that.
Absolutely.
That's
right.
also helpful.
Yeah. Supportive partners are a godsend. Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is my long-winded way of saying, Bryan, that I appreciate what you do. I appreciate you being here and sharing so openly today. It was great having you.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. Yeah. Enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for going to the deeper places with me and letting me share counterintuitive advice. So yeah, enjoyed our conversation.
That's it for this episode. This episode, as well as this podcast, was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help business owners elevate their business to 6, 7, and 8-figure years, all without burning out. If you're looking to grow your business, as well as get the time freedom that you are looking for, visit us at joinpurplecircle.com and see what we can do to help you and your business.